Hey guys, welcome back to Community Starcraft 2. We're going to be changing things up a little bit today and be doing a new series that I'm starting, which is called the Replay Review Series. We'll take a look at some replays and go through them and kind of learn some stuff as we go through. And of course, this one is going to be from SC2ReplayStats.com Season 2 Ladder Challenge, which you guys can see there on the screen. We're going to be watching a TvT today, and I figured that kind of mixing in these little replays will be really nice to have just to learn some general stuff and watch a game being broadcast by myself. And yeah, so we'll just learn some stuff in here, and the game's already actually going in the background, so let's go ahead and jump into it. But the other thing I should mention before we get started actually is check out our sponsor for this match, which is SC2ReplayStats.com. They're a really cool site that will show you a lot about your own replays and stuff that you can upload there, and they will give you information on what you can do better in those replays. Lots of other really cool stuff that you can check out. So check those out when you have the second. There is a link down in the description. Let's go ahead and jump into this game. So as we can see, it is a TvT here. Well, I guess we can see if we look at the top here. But it is a TvT, and we'll just be taking a look at different aspects of this game, and be kind of hybridizing it a little bit to show you guys a little bit about what you could do in your own games by copying these players, as well as just watching a fun game. So let's go ahead and check this out. This is on a new map called Merry-Go-Round, which is, I have to say, is like one of the worst map names of all time. But it looks like we have szynoob, who's our blue Terran. He's scouting, looking around for Yatzy, and this is a 3-spawn map. So he's going to get out there, try to get some information. One thing he's doing is he's going ahead and walling off, opening up with the second barracks. That's a little unusual, but yeah. So we'll have to see how this game progresses. But so he's opening up with 2 barracks, and it's probably just going to be a lot of Marines to start off, and this is something you can do in your own games, but TvT is a little weird in its openers in the sense that sometimes you can get build order counted a little bit, but yeah, we'll have to see what happens with these guys. You can see Yatzy is going ahead mining gas here. I would say actually don't start mining both of these gases this early. I would take an earlier one and then a later one at probably 17 or 18 supply at the absolute earliest. This is unusually early, but SCY coming in here trying to get some information with this scout. He's going to see both of these gases, so he's going to be thinking, okay, if you see both of these gases this early, this has to mean something like a tech rush. So we could be seeing some Banshees, we could be seeing all kinds of different things. And I should also mention that I don't pre-screen these replays. This is the first time I've seen this, so this information is just as new to you as it is to me. So on the other side, it looks like the blue Terran is actually not making workers as quickly because he's dropping a lot of barracks. So this is a really unusual build here. And again, these are things you can try in your own games if you're curious. This is actually a 6 barracks right now, so this is going to be a lot of Marines being pushed out here. And on the other side, our red Terran Yatzy is actually just making 2 Reapers. So this is about a gold level game, and I want to talk a little bit about your openers here at these levels. The biggest thing is that you can see Yatzy's actually floating quite a bit of money. There's 150 in the bank here. This could be a factory, this could be a lot of different things if he just went ahead and spent his money. So his openers are going to be ran just a little bit slower than you'd expect. Of course, you're going to get away with a lot more of this kind of stuff in lower leagues, but if you want to get better as a player, definitely look for ways that you can improve your build. You can see he's still floating a lot of money here. He could even drop a command center right now and be totally fine. But he's going to send his Reapers out, and this is one benefit to scouting. You need to know where your opponent is, so these Reapers are going to go to the wrong base right away. But this is a weird opener so far from both these players. So you can see the blue Terran here is just making a lot of Marines. He's just making them one at a time off of these barracks. Hasn't even started to mine gas here, so this is pretty all in from him. He needs to do some damage with this attack right away. So we'll see what happens, and it looks like Yatzy's just going to go ahead and take a command center. So like we were saying, he could have dropped a command center a long time ago, but let's say that he gets a bunch of Marines out here. Let's say there's like 30 Marines or something crazy like that goes to attack him. And he has all this money sitting in the bank here, and you think, well, if I die to this many Marines, what can I do to stop that in the future? You can see Yatzy coming up here with his Reapers trying to get a little bit done, but he's actually just too late. And if he just ran his build a little better, those Reapers would be in the base probably dealing a lot of damage, whereas now he just has to go back home. So that's a bit of a problem with his opening. You definitely want to run your openers to have a specific goal in mind. So if you open Reapers, just make them one at a time off your barracks. Don't wait for the reactor. And just send the first one over and see what you can get done. You'll see that in pro replays and stuff too. Here's the smart thing from Yatzy though. He saw how many Marines there were. This is really unusual. He knows that the only reason he's going to hold this is if he has bunkers. So he starts his bunkers up right away. By the time the Marines get there, this bunker should definitely be done. The second one should be done almost, I'd say about 90%. Depends on if he waits. And yeah, this is smart to send one Marine up to see what's going on. He sends the rest of his Marines up. You can see that here's that 90% mark off this bunker. If he just went, he might actually have a timing to kill him here. So if you're going to run an opener like this where you're making a lot of stuff and you're attacking, don't just wait. So here comes these guys. He loads into the bunkers here. You want to pull SCVs to repair, and you can see them coming off the line right now. If you keep this bunker alive as a Terran, there's really no way that they can ever break you unless they just try to run past the bunker, which is usually a bad idea. So here's so he held that off. Pretty good little play there from Yatzy. But the other thing is that look at his gas. This is what I was talking about at the beginning. You don't need this much gas right away to start off the game. So he's starting off with 800 gas, and that's not being spent at all. You definitely want to balance your resources a little better, or at least the best you possibly can. So yeah, just pay attention to that kind of stuff. Just take only one gas. I mean, even if you're making double Reaper off this barracks, one gas can almost support it. You don't really need that much, so pay a little more attention to it. Here come the Marines back up here once again. You'll notice the good engagement angle here from Yatzy trying to post Marines here in an arc and try to get as good a surface area as possible. And is he actually just going to kill him with these Marines? This is a lot of Marines in here. He's definitely going to have to pull SCVs to deal with this, but look at his money. If you look at the red player's money, if he actually just spent it, he would have no problem with this whatsoever. So that's a big deal, is make sure you can spend your money. Finally, the tank is sieging up, using the Marines to actually block the other Marines from getting in there and dealing a lot of damage. So far he's doing okay. He has lost a lot of workers to this so far, but at the same time he does have a second command center. So the biggest things I have to harp on this game is that you definitely want to make sure you're spending your money adequately, as if he would have just easily crushed this. He could have easily had a couple of tanks up at the front door. Those Marines never would have done anything at all. You can see the Marines still trying to be a little bit irritating here. But for the most part, this has helped. I mean, if he just starts scooting his tanks up and hitting these Marines, and there's really nothing he should be able to do from this point. So you can see the Marines starting to post themselves behind the worker line, trying to get as many kills as they can. They shouldn't do too much, assuming that he pulls his Marines over there, and he's actually losing way more than he should. But even still, that can be a big problem. You definitely want to watch out for that. So the Marines coming up here, trying to do some little more damage to this tank, and if they don't eliminate this tank, then this rush is never going to work. So now, if you're the blue player here, I just want to call him noob because that's just what his name says, but you definitely want to just start dropping command centers, and especially since you have him sitting back in his base, you know that he's probably not going to be moving out for a little while, considering he did take all those SCV losses. So you can see the worker count is 19 to 18. The blue player definitely was all-inning with that, but this is a weird situation where this game is actually going to, or at least should, stabilize. And you can see now he has the tanks up here. He could have easily had these tanks out here about 2 minutes earlier and just completely crushed that attack. But because he chose to wait, now he's in a little worse position than he should have been. So if you have any trouble with your openers or whatever, then watch the videos that I make, because I make specific videos for these kind of situations, so you know that, oh, I have this much money and this much gas. I need to just drop buildings right now and be able to spend it, because that's way more important than anything else at this stage of the game. Tanks are sieging up here on the low ground. They should blow these Marines to bits, and the command center is actually just boldly floating its way out here, no problem. And yeah, these Marines clean up pretty much no problem. And like I was talking about before, if you're this blue Terran, more importantly, you need to be making SCVs behind this. He's still only sitting on about 23 SCVs, and that's really an issue. On either side of this, I want to make mention that this is a lower level replay, but on either side of this, if either one of you, if you're watching this game, if either one of you would have just made more SCVs, made them more on time, made more better use of your resources here, you would have won this game easily. Imagine if you had 3 extra tanks with this push, which you could more than afford with the amount of money that's sitting around. Then this push would be basically game-ending. But on the other side, if you're this blue player, yeah, the Marine attack is nice, but if it doesn't win for you, you should be behind, and you are. But at the same time, if you're just making SCVs regularly during this, then it's really not all that bad of a loss, considering you lost something. So the tanks are now sieging up here, going to kill some workers. The blue player is actually really in a bad spot here. He may have to lift up this orbital command and start moving on the high ground, because this is just too strong of a siege right now. Marines are coming back in here to try and flank, and you do want to split up your Marines at least into little bunches and then attack in here so that you don't take that too much damage from the siege tank. You can see it's just laying waste to these Marines right now. In worst case, just walk your Marines right up next to it, so that you're not taking any more damage from the tank. As if you are standing right here next to the tank, it won't actually deal a lot of damage to it. So, yeah. Anyway, so transition is on for the blue player now, and we can see that he is starting his starport. He should start medevacs right away, as he does have the money for it. So this is the one thing that you need to really pay attention to. Yeah, killing this tank is great, and these Marines should do the job, but if you can focus on the other things that need to be done, such as making medevacs, such as making your workers and stuff, it's going to put you in a lot better situation. So try to keep an eye on the different multitasking things that need to happen. Now Yatzy's starting to get a little bit more brave out on the map right now. I'm just like stumbling over myself. But he's starting to move down here, seeing what he can get done. But still, worker counts, 25 to 23. In a normal game, and I realize they've lost some SCVs this game, in a normal game you could have 23 and 25 workers easily by 6 minutes. Maybe a little bit less than that if you're Terran. But either way, here we go. I mean, these guys are just walking past each other. You definitely need some map information as well. Maybe some scans to figure out where the army is. But Yatzy's going to get some pretty good position here with these two tanks. At this point, you basically need a full surround. He's actually just going to abandon the base on the low ground here. Is the blue Terran. He needs to open his depot so he can get his workers back in there. But you have to say the red player is definitely in an advantage right now, as he's mining on 2 bases, or at least he should be mining on 2 bases. So this is a huge problem right now. Like we were talking about in the macro video, making SCVs is great, but you can only make SCVs if you have the supply to make them. Right now, he is very, very supply blocked. And I get it that this attack is really important. Doing something cute here and actually dropping the Marines. Where are his Marines going? So he's just going back home, and it looks like he's actually dealing with the drop of his own. So this game getting a little bit crazy right now. But you could see those 2 tanks were siege right here, and these 3 Marines killed both of them. No problem. I mean, Yatzy should have left some Marines back there to deal with this, but now he's having to deal with a drop back at home. The tank's still trying to clean this up the best he possibly can. So at least the blue player, I want to say the noob or whatever, because SZY noob doesn't really roll off your tongue, but we'll just call him the noob. He I guess finds a way to deal with that by just counterattacking. But medevac coming back here. We have a lot of Marines starting to rally forward and just hanging out down here at the base. But yeah, I mean, the biggest issue that I have to press on here is, number one, the red player's money is just way too high. If he could spend this would be about 4 or 5 tanks. He could easily have these tanks forward and be able to just crush this blue player right now. For the blue player, the biggest problem throughout the game has just been the opener didn't really work out, but it should have worked a lot better if you just kept making it workers during all this. And we can even just sit here and watch his command center and notice that they're not working at all. And that's a big deal, and he should realize that now that he drops his mules, and yeah. But if you ever watch really high-level games, you'll notice that these players are always making workers. If you could just sit here like this the entire game and be like, let's watch him make workers, and this would never stop making workers. And that's the whole point behind this building, is just to build workers and allow places to, or allow workers to return mining to them. So that's the one big thing you need to pay attention to. And if either of these players had cleaned up on either one of those issues, they would have already won this game by now. So if you're looking to improve, and if you're looking to learn stuff from other replays, especially people around your similar skill level, these guys are gold. So you can watch these replays and think, well, if I'm in gold, maybe I'm doing these same things. Maybe I should watch my own replays and see if I can see the same things we're seeing in this one. But another drop coming in here, trying to fragment the army. And you see that it actually does pull some of his stuff back here. But he knows about the attack at the front. I'm pretty sure he's actually seen that for quite a while, but the drop is now picked up. A lot of workers have been killed this game, 27 to 14. But even still, let's look back at the command centers for the blue player. There's nothing working here, and he needs to also be making a lot of Marines off of these barracks. The factory and starport are also idle, and I get it that these attacks are important, but you can do more than one thing at a time. And that's why you want to definitely use your hotkeys here. You can see he has a whole bunch of stuff hotkeyed down here at the bottom. The fights are getting really close right now, and it looks like the red player's just barely going to push this back. So a really interesting little fight there, but nevertheless, these games still starting to stabilize, and you just really have to look at the money from these guys and just be like, wow, this is a really big issue, because if either one of these guys were spending their money, they should have already ended this game. But the Marines coming up here, going to start chipping away at these units a little bit, and the Marauder should actually die in no time, but he's actually getting some decent healing from this. SCVs come back off the line to try and deal with this tank, and it will be enough. So if you're this blue player, let's take a look at his situation. Let's actually just pretend we're in this situation. Let's pretend that you have 2,000 minerals and about 900 gas, and you just failed an attack. What are you going to do next? Well, the first thing you should really do, I don't care how you have to spend your money, is spend your money. So I would drop a command center. I'd make sure all my buildings are working, including the factory and the starport. I don't care what it's making. Just make sure you're making stuff off of there. And in the meantime, if you know that you can't spend your money, make more production buildings. Make reactors on these barracks, considering they're only producing Marines. Make tech labs if you want to switch into Marauders or something. Just find ways to spend your money. Here comes another drop out of the red player, just going to try and kill some workers here. And you can see he's actually repairing this depot, which is a little weird. But a lot of the workers do go down, so another successful drop here from the red player. And the medevac might die. No, he does go ahead and boost out of there, which is a useful ability. As you can see, you will want to hit that if you need to get out of there, especially. Both these guys dropping scans, trying to figure out what's going on. I think the red player is actually just scanning around outside of his base to figure out if there was an army there, but there wasn't. Okay, so let's look at the game timer and see what's going on. The game timer shows 22 minutes. By this point in the game, if it were a normal game, or even if you watch good players in this kind of a chaotic of a game, they would already have a 4th base mining. So this base would have already been taken, and you can see these guys just barely taking their 3rd base. Even the red player hasn't even started thinking about taking a 3rd base. So that's definitely something you need to watch out for as well in your games. Just try to stay on a tempo wherein you're taking a lot of bases, you're making a lot of SCVs, and you can see how hurt the tempo is from the blue player by just not making these SCVs. Nevertheless, still moving out with a lot of Marines and tanks. Gonna try and put a siege on here, and you can see the medevac's actually baiting this army out just a little bit. A little bit of a control mistake. Whenever you're moving across the map, you do want to just attack move. So just select attack here on your orders and click somewhere on the map so that they will at least fight rather than die for free. With the tanks being here, you can't attack your Marines into tanks like that. You need to figure out what's going on. Kind of hard to see the fight right now. And the SCVs do come off the line trying to deal with these tanks once again, and he does push that back. So again, both these guys, basically, they're really only down to 1 base's worth of mining, and even this is not a fully mining base. You could still squeeze another 3 or 4 workers on this mineral patches and be just fine. So, yeah, so we actually do see the 3rd command center transforming into an orbital, so he will definitely have an economy advantage the longer he goes on. And you don't need to keep attacking this hard. If you have siege tanks down here like this, just sit him there. Just sit him there and don't try to kill him right away. Because he keeps trying to get aggressive with this, he loses his Marines, then all of a sudden the tanks are completely unguarded. So, coming back down here, he does move his medevacs back. In the meantime, the red player is still doing well with this drop over here, trying to clean up some depots, trying to get some workers. If he can get a tank, that will be enormous. And he does stim up right up to the tank, and he's getting close enough so the tank can actually fire. He needs to be careful and not lose this medevac, because that's his only escape route. He could actually still fight this army, though. You need to realize this is only 3 Marines against the 4 Marines and 1 Marauder of you with a medevac. Should be able to win that. Tank's now moving down here. And again, another missed opportunity from this red player. If he just loaded into his medevacs and dropped on top of this tank, those tanks would have never done anything worthwhile. He redrops his units back in here. This is something that I really like throughout the course of this game. But a little bit of a skirmish here in the middle of the map. There's a lot of action going on in this game, of course, and you can see it's probably taxing these guys' ability to continue to make workers here, as this base has been ready to mine for about 4 minutes and it only has 5 workers on it. So, yeah, that's just a really big problem that we're seeing throughout the course of these games. Nevertheless, still the drop going on here, trying to kill down these or rather not the command centers, but the engineering base. The tech lab going down on the factory as well, and you can see another big problem. You can't make units when you're supply blocked here. You got to remember to make depots, and he has lost a lot of depots back here. And finally, the medevac is focused down, so this drop should have an input to it. So let's take a look at another tab here. Let's take a look at the upgrades. It's 2-2 for red and 1-1 for blue. So red has a huge upgrade advantage right now. So you can see his +3 weapons are on the way. And both the engineering base having to be rebuilt here for the blue player. That's one thing as well that you want to pay attention to. Make sure that your engineering bays are set somewhere that's protected by your buildings, so that if you get attacked, they will not be exposed. And in the meantime, here comes a little bit of an attack, and you can see the upgrades really starting to shine through here as the red player just crushes through that attack right now. And falling back to this 3rd base, all of a sudden, because he wasn't making enough workers and because he doesn't have enough money or at least enough production to spend all of his money, this attack is looking really scary. And if he was able to spend that, he'd be just fine. So, looking back around the map here, let's take a look at some more medevacs rallying out. The production really needs to be scaled up for both of these players. The mining for the red player especially is still only on 1 base. They need to take extra bases like right away, and then you need to scale your production along with that as well. So we'll see what happens in the rest of this game. Still, scans being dropped here. This is something I really like, so you can at least see where your opponent is by virtue of these scans, and you can set up your attacks properly. Sieges his tanks preemptively, and the red player realizes what's going on and just backs away since he can see this. You can see everything on the watchtower. The Marine's trying to go over to the left and deal with these tanks, and the tanks just siege up and say, nope, you're not getting over here. At least not without a fight. But another drop being loaded up here, and this is something you can do in TvT, is if you guys get into a standoff with your siege tanks, whereas there's tanks here and there's tanks there, just send a little drop out to the side and make them have to peel off and deal with that. And of course, worst case scenario, if you're paying attention to it, you can just pick these units up and get out of there. So it shouldn't be anything too large of an investment if you control correctly. Still, let's take a look at the red player's gas. 2,500 gas, pushing 2,600 gas. This is when you need to find ways to spend this. And I mean, he can mix in Ravens. He could start. I mean, the biggest thing he needs to do is just take extra bases so he can spend that. But Medevac's moving out now as well, and they'll be dropping in here. As you can see, the red point's kind of queued up to this center base. The drop from the red player is actually doing a lot of damage here, and all of a sudden the blue player has to kind of think about, do I go back here? What do I do to deal with that? And in the meantime, he's going to be doing his own drop to try and deal some damage. So, yeah, a really big set of drops here kind of going at each other. And you need to be careful and not walk into siege tank fire. As you can see, the tank's just laying waste to this. So this is kind of the problem in TvT, is that once both players get their tank line set up, it's really hard to break from either side. The damage is doing a ton of or rather the drop is doing a ton of damage here from the blue player. Same goes for Yatzy. He's doing a lot with this drop. Killing the starport's a pretty big deal. But the orbital's going to go down, and yeah, this is the... I hate to just harp on this again, but you really need to make sure that you are actually spending all of your money here. You can see the money that he's losing right now. This could be basically an entire extra army if he were able to spend all that. Finally, the fusion core coming down here, so he might have a solution to spending all that money, but we'll have to see what he opts to do here. So two tanks sitting in the middle of the map. You don't want to leave those unguarded. And if you're the blue player, can you actually see this? No. You need to figure out what's going on here, because if you can drop your units on top of these tanks, there's really nothing they can do about it. Still, the drop totally unchecked here, and you can see him starting to pull some Marines back in the base. Once again, supply blocked. That's a big problem, and you obviously can't produce until the supply block is resolved. The drop in here for both players is doing a ton of damage, and you can see it's really difficult to deal with all this if you try and put your opponent in several different places. But the Vikings do go ahead and shoot down that medevac. These Marines, I mean, they're dead. Don't waste any more time dealing with these Marines, because they're dead. In the meantime, he does get a nice round on these tanks and goes ahead and takes them out. Still, the drop from Yatzy doing a ton of damage. You need to find ways to deal with this. You know, if you have to peel off a medevac and send it back home full of units, then fine. That's totally fine to send it back there and deal with that. But you can see, without the medevac, these Marines are just toast, especially at the upgrade disadvantage he is right now. I believe it's still 3-1 to 1-1 at this point, but could chase down the medevac. He's not going to quite get it, I don't think. And yeah, it does get away by the skin of its teeth. So looks like Yatzy trying to reposition here, and you don't want to leave your tanks out in the middle of the map if you can help it, but I realize that it can be really taxing. Finally, a third base landed for the red player. And at this point, this base is about to mine out, so he's going to be reduced back to 1 base's worth of mining. And again, if you can find the attention, you have 1,300 minerals. Just drop another command center somewhere. You can see that that's what our blue player is doing here, as I think he actually lost a command center in his main base here. So either way, another little attack coming out here from the side. Going to try and deal some damage to this command center. He shouldn't lose it. I mean, he should be able to pull his army back in time to deal with that. At least pull some SCVs off here and repair. And he finally does. And even still, lift it up so the Marauders can't hit it. Find different ways to deal with this. And is he actually going to lose this? It's getting really, really close and barely is going to stay alive. So that was way too close for comfort. Both these players, once again, so much money in the bank. They could easily have spent this by now. And I want to always relate this back to your own games. If you find yourself in your own games with this kind of money, and this even happens to me, find ways to spend your money. Just make a ton of production buildings, make a ton of units, research upgrades. It doesn't even matter what you need. Just find a way to do it. And the stim coming in here, the battlecruiser finally does come out and gets focused down right away. So that's kind of a big loss there to just dump a battlecruiser away. This is another thing you need to sense here if you're this blue player. You're probably not going to push him over, considering your upgrade disadvantage. You need to pull these units back and save whatever you can. He is starting to rally his tanks forward here, but now that the front lines are done, these tanks are dead, so at least he does, or at least he might be able to save it in this medevac, and yeah, he does get away. So, yeah, this game is pretty wild so far, but well, again, we're back to basically one base's worth of mining from the blue player. You can see he does pull all of his SCVs, realizing what's going on. You need to take these SCVs, dump them down here, or put them over here, and I think that's actually where they're going. But let's look at the game clock once again. 34 minutes. Red player is still just barely mining on 1.5 bases. These bases are going to mine out here any second. You should be having a 4th, maybe a 5th base up. If this were a pro-level player, or at least even a decent Masters-level player, they should have the whole map by now. So I really want you guys in your own games to focus on what's going to get you into the next stage of the game. Yeah, you can attack and you can do this damage and stuff, but if you just spend more of your attention on getting more bases. So we can see a little bit of a skirmish here, actually, so we'll come back to that point in just a second. As this base might actually go down, this one battlecruiser is actually really strong, considering that these Marines are only 2-2, and as the battlecruiser number starts to pile up, you can see there's a second one coming out, and as that happens, this is going to be harder and harder for this blue player to deal with. Siege position is pretty good. He can actually hit some of these SCVs, so you don't actually have to attack in here like this. You can just wait and let your tanks deal the damage and make them attack into you. So let's get back to the point I was making before. If you're playing a decent high-level Masters player, they will basically have the whole map by this stage of the game. So it's almost 37 minutes, and I mean, I realize it's difficult and whatnot, but at the same time, your attention should probably be focused more on how am I going to get into the next stage of the games with the lead, instead of how am I going to kill him right now. So both these players have that how am I going to kill him right now mentality, and you can see it's really hurting them in the long term. But he does go ahead and get that command center, so both of these guys really reduced down to 1 base's worth of mining. And as we talked about in the macro video, for every race, 3 bases worth of mining, fully mining, are what you want to shoot for. So SCV coming back up here, completely ignored by the army for whatever reason. But this is getting into a strange standoff here. And if you're the red player, what you want to do with your army in this situation is exactly try and kill their tanks, try to lure their Marines back into the tank fire. So he's at least controlling well with his battle cruisers. One thing he's doing well so far. But even during this, you have map control if you're the red player. Take another base. Take it here, take it there. It doesn't matter where you take it. Just get another base going and keep up the tempo that you've established so far. So red player finally starting to gain some traction here. You can see some Marines and everything starting to stem in here, but the battlecruiser is just too strong. You need to keep your Marines alive, so just take them away from those tanks. And again, just keep your tank back here and pull your battlecruisers forward and backward about this middle area to try and lure the Marines back into here. He does have Yamato, so he can kill these tanks right away. But yeah, I mean, this can go on forever. If you don't lose any units, and if you force them always to take bad fights, then your attacks will basically never end. You can see, finally, he's spent all of his money. So the blue player is finally down to where he should be. But I mean, I guess the one thing I can say is that he is matching his production with his income, but his income should be much higher by now if he were able to take extra bases. But again, that's what makes good players so good, is they're able to manage all this stuff. And again, this is why we're learning and trying to get better in our own games. So there's now 5 BCs out. This is getting really, really scary. But at the same time, these 5 BCs need to be a little careful, because if they get caught by a lot of Marines or something, this could be really bad. But siege the tank. If you're the red player, just siege it. Yeah, anywhere is fine. Force some Marines to attack into it, and yeah, this is exactly it. So he did have the siege tank come up just a little bit late. So that was a little bit of a problem, and if you could get that siege tank up there earlier and just kind of force some Marines to attack into the siege tank, that would be a lot better. These BCs are just trying to get what they can. At the same time, actually just focusing down these medevacs with the Yamato cannon would not be a bad idea at all. And again, here we're finally arriving at the red player spending all of his money. Still, he has a ton of gas floating, but all you need to do to get into your own games, or at least to get into a good position in most of your games, is spend all of your money and try to make as much money as possible. So if these guys are limited to 1 base, if they had several other bases, you could imagine that their army would be incrementally larger depending on how much extra income they had if they were spending it. But the drop coming out here, going to get wasted right away. That medevac was the saddest medevac ever. But the reactor's going down on these starports as well. You can see he probably wanted these for Vikings to deal with these battlecruisers, but he just doesn't have the income to do that. And all of a sudden the tank sieging is going to give him crippling position right now. He's going to lose all these production structures. The Thor and a lot of Marines are sitting out here. He just can't engage this right now. This is just too strong. He finally does it in the move command here from the red player. This is why you always want to make sure that you click attack, or at least hit the T button, or whatever this is mapped to, and attack somewhere without just walking around and losing a bunch of health because of it. He's going to try and split them up here a little bit. I don't think I really like this idea. These Marines should die for pretty much nothing. And what did they kill here? A couple depots? I mean, that's not going to help you close out a game. So he loses up the whole army for free. At the same time, he does open an opportunity to kill this tank, so he can at least gain a little bit of position. But he leaves his own tank alone, and the tank just lays waste to it. If he could go ahead and just get this command center and get out of there, that'd be fine. But now this is what I'm talking about. If he just gets right on top of the battlecruisers with no product, and all of a sudden the battlecruisers die in a matter of seconds. So they're all going down almost instantly. Finally, the reinforcements rally up here, and this army is almost stimmed to death. He needs to be really careful here, as like 2 shots from any of these Marines will kill them. But running back up here, the Marines are chasing him all the way back to his base. And what's going to happen here? This is a really close fight, but even still, the fact these guys are so red, you definitely want to go home and just heal these guys up for the time being. You can turn around now because you're forced to fight, and yeah, he is. But even still, the battlecruiser, caught in a position, dies once again. And the blue player is pressing up here. He might actually just end this game, considering this is looking pretty strong from him. You can see this is a 40-minute game right now, but even still, the 4th base has just barely started to mine, and that's a little bit of BM here out of the red player. But nevertheless, kind of a weird game. Really, what I want to accomplish with these replays is getting a sense of, these are games that you're probably playing if you're playing on the ladder. And it's easy to look at from an omnipresent point of view and say, well, they could do all these things, and they could do all those things. Well, this is your opportunity to take what you could have, take an example of, like, players at your level, you could have done these things if only you paid attention to it. And the next time you go back into your own games, you're going to be looking at the clock and saying, oh man, it's like 26 minutes and I don't even have a 3rd base yet, or it's 26 minutes and I don't even have a 4th base yet, and think, well, I can start building better, I can start doing better, and I hope that these replay review sessions are something that's useful for you guys to get more information on how to become better at StarCraft. We're going to do a lot more of these in the future, and I'll be doing a lot more work with sc2replaystats.com, so check out that site to get some really good replay analysis on your own games, and who knows, if you have good enough games, you might see them casted on this channel. So take care. I hope you guys enjoyed the game. I hope you learned something. If you have any questions about anything, definitely feel free to post them down below. But in the meantime, I guess I'll see you guys later.